It is Wall of Fame week, Legends Night week, Argonauts week, First and Now every week. The official BC Lions podcast, Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski. And World Vision is our presenting partner of First and Now. BCLions.com/World Vision is the page people can go to if they want to become a supporter. Nikki, 2 wins in a row, solid one in Montreal. We're going to talk to Damon Allen today. Things are looking good.
Yeah, I think we got our swagger back, as a wise viral clip once said.
Who was that again?
Just a high school game in Detroit or something. One of my favorite clips.
One of those used words. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Well, it's from a live interview from like this local news station. It's hilarious. But yeah, getting a double-digit win against a 10-1 team, cross country, short week, all of that definitely warrants getting your swagger back.
Yeah, and as mentioned, we're going to talk Wall of Fame, the 2000 Grey Cup champions going in. Damon Allen, the signal caller for that team, is this week's guest. But the 2000 team beat Montreal. The 2024 Lions just beat Montreal, albeit in a regular season game. The 10-1 Alouettes going in, as you said, and complimentary football was the name of the game. We saw some good from Nathan Rourke, William Stanback showing why this team made him a priority before free agency officially started. Defense made plays when it had to, got dealt a couple bad hands with those turnovers, but held them to a couple of field goals at the end of the day. It was a good all-around win, Nikki.
And like we said last week, it was going to be a tough test going against Cody Fajardo on offense. You know, Walter Fletcher, running back, probably the best offensive line in football, and then all these stars on defense. And pretty much every category we listed in terms of what Montreal does well, the Lions outed them in those categories. And we're talking about the Montreal being the league best, where they allow 5.84 yards per play. BC put up over 8 yards per play and almost 500 total yards in net offense, right? Obviously, William Stanback, David Mackey, and Nathan Rourke all contributed for 186 rushing yards. So that's something Montreal wasn't used to seeing. Talked about how Montreal, they're a high completion percentage team. There are a lot of different times where they immediately went to the screens, and it seemed like A.C. Lee, Ronald Ken Jr., Sionte Evans, Ryder Varga, they were there to make instant tackles, put Montreal on second and long. One stat I love from this game too is Montreal's first 5 drives, they ended because they were in 2nd and 10 or longer. Yeah. So immediately you're putting the offense, you're putting Fajardo's unit at a disservice, putting him in a tough situation, and the Lions capitalized with an early lead. Made it a little closer at the end of the second quarter, unfortunately, off that, which we were talking about on tap. It was the turnover that ended up in Montreal territory that they came and drove all the way down. But immediately in the third quarter,
14-point swing.
Momentum swap there, yeah.
Yeah, and winning in that environment, I know you sent a post on X from the stands. That was loud when we were out on offense. And we even remarked last week, last week I think was the first time I remember working here where they used crowd noise in practice going to Montreal, and they pretty much sold it out, right? 23,000 and change. Winning in that environment, I think, 'cause that's what you hear about this team when they have to go into Winnipeg. If it's cold in November, it's not the best environment. Well, that's a pretty good test run for possibly, this team's going to have to go into Saskatchewan next month in October. Could be a little cold, and it's going to be loud. That was impressive for me. Oh, yeah. It was a sold-out barn, electric atmosphere in there. It's just a little different. Everything's a little different when you go to Montreal, in a good way, too. The atmosphere is pretty rowdy. There are people, I took a video of this to our WhatsApp chat during the game, but there are people with literally, I guess they sell beer cases there because there are beer cases out in the stands, or in the bleachers that they got at McGill there. So that was pretty electric. And you talk about the adversity too. I mean, right off the get-go, the Lions, they're pinned back on their own end. Nathan Rourke's offense is on the 2-yard line, and Nathan throws a bullet to Alex Hollins. It's a slant pass, in tight coverage for a first down. The very next play is to Keon Hatcher, where if he throws that half a second late, that's a touchdown for the Alouettes, right? Mm-hmm. But it's Nathan Rourke's confidence, not being afraid, being more comfortable of that, and even on the Aiden Eberhard touchdown drive, there's a 2nd and 16 where Nathan gets sacked, and Nathan has to, on the 2nd and 16 play, it's getting loud, like you said, he has to step up, and he finds Eberhard for the first down, and then a couple plays later, I was watching the game back, and Paul Lapolice was demonstrating this on the replay, the touchdown, but it's like, I think Alouettes, they brought like 7 or 8 guys, and the rest of they're not, usually when you blitz 7 or 8 guys, you just play cover 0, right? But they're in like some zone look, and Nathan Rourke, that's the point of it, is Nathan Rourke has to read the defense, and he does, throws a strike to Aiden for
his second touchdown in as many weeks, and off in a roll in there. It was really impressive to see what Rourke did too.
Yeah, you saw David Mackey scamper for a touchdown, Rourke himself. Each of those touchdowns had excellent blocking from the likes of Riley Pickett and Keon Hatcher. You know, those are the fundamental execution things, to use over cliche words, but they matter. And in this case, it mattered. 7-6, and welcoming the Toronto Argonauts to Save on Foods Field at BC Place on Friday. As mentioned, Legends Night presented by Bosa Properties. We're going to be celebrating our 70 years of history. We're wearing gunmetal. We can say that. The full teaser video coming out Friday. If you're listening to this before Friday, check out our YouTube and social media accounts. But excited to have the 2000 Grey Cup champions again go into the Wall of Fame. We'll look back at 2000 here in just a few minutes. But let's talk about this matchup. Remember, went into Toronto way back in week 1. Speaking of Aiden Eberhardt, we had him on the podcast that week, I believe, going in to the season opener. Cameron Dukes is at quarterback. The Lions couldn't sustain the momentum that night. Remember, we saw Thibaut Debaye fumble recovery touchdown. Justin McInnes had one, I think, in that second quarter. But ultimately, the play in the trenches was a big storyline that night. I think Vernon Adams was sacked 6 times. Not good. Despite their recent struggles, 2 straight losses, they're 6-6. Chad Kelly, since his reinstatement, he's been consistent in stretches, but this is still an Argonauts team very capable of putting up points and getting to the quarterback. So let's not let records fool you here.
Yeah, the defensive front is definitely right up there at the tops in the CFL. Flair Omalade,
huge.
Jake Serezna obviously is healthy. I'm looking at their injury report. They might get Jared Brinkman back this week, who's kind of one of the more underrated players. But you know, we always talk about the Bombers having like a factory defensive backs. It seems like the Argos have a factory defensive lineman. They got Jordan Williams starting. No relation to Jordan Williams, former BC Lion, but they got a nose tackle named Jordan Williams that's playing really well. A guy named Nate Hawley that's playing really well for them. Brinkman, like we said, is a good player. But the area I'm looking at is it was pretty astonishing last year when remember there was a stretch where Chad Kelly didn't get sacked for like 2 months.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous. So the Argos last year they had 68 sacks and they allowed 19. So this year they've already allowed 33, so almost double of that already. And that's the difference. And I know they've kind of been shifting some guys around. Ryan Hunter, one of their best offensive linemen, he missed last week due to personal reasons, so he's probably going to be back this week. But I mean, they got one of the better Damon Allen won the most outstanding offensive lineman last year. He's their right tackle, so he's still there, getting familiarity again with Chad Kelly. This was
the major key to Chad Kelly's MOP was the fact that there were nights, as you say, where he wouldn't have had to have his jersey washed, I don't think, by the equipment staff after. And yeah, those are all the fundamentals we're talking about. And unfortunately, they ended up just having a bad day in the Eastern Final against the Montreal Alouettes. That's the great thing about this league. If you're not on your game in November, it's going to cost you. So yeah, talking about this Lions offensive line again, Chris Slugger going to get back in at left tackle. We're going to see another test for Corey Woodruff. So the completely revamped left side since they last met. Remember, after that loss to Toronto, Michael Couture went to the 6th game, and then Slugger came in and played left guard, I think. So they made some changes as well after that, and let's hope that's a key to a win here.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like the Lions, based off what Toronto showed this year at O-line, you gotta like Sione Tuihema. Christian Covington's totally come alive. He quietly has 5 sacks on the season now. There's a guy named Matthew Betts making his home debut this season, so look for him.
His real home debut.
A BC Place debut this season, to be more specific. So look at those guys to get after it. Toronto's also getting some guys back, it looks like, too, outside of Brinkman, and this team desperately misses Winton McManus in the middle of their linebacker, one of the best players in the CFL. So
big-time game breaker.
He could be coming back this week. Devaris Daniels has been kind of their consistent wide receiver 1. He missed last week. Looked like he's coming back. Dejon Brissett. They have a lot of Canadian receivers. So Dejon Brissett I saw is practicing. So a lot of weapons. This team was 16-2 last year for a reason.
And let's not forget a guy who wasn't there last year, but in the backfield, Kadeem Carey had a big game in week 1.
Yeah, they have that the 3-headed monster, right? And then I was looking at my
Janarian Grant returning kicks.
In my what do they do well category. Yes. That's the first thing I have listed. They lead the league in punt return average. Janarian Grant has 4 return touchdowns this season. We know him quite well from his time in Winnipeg. the Lions did a fairly good job on him in week 1. I remember we talked to Dave Mackey. He had the opening tackle of a special team season for the Lions on Janarian Grant in that week 1 game. But he's one of those guys where you cannot take an inch off, a second off, whatever, right? If you give him any slim of daylight, he'll make you pay. So that's key, is just not allowing. You got to keep the offense in check, but you also got to keep the special teams unit in check, because they can put up touchdowns too.
7:00 Friday to kick off week number 15. Lions will have a bye next week, but in total, 4 of 5 remaining games at home, and that should bode well as we really have this race for top spot heating up. Winnipeg Blue Bombers also at 7-6, but have the season series. Of course, can't do anything about that. Just have to finish with a better record than Winnipeg. Bombers with the bye this week, like we were saying. Legends Night, 2000 Grey Cup champions, halftime ceremony, Wall of Fame, Damon Allen, Louis Pasaglia, Alfred Jackson, Steve Harden, just naming a few great guys, Jamie Terrace, who will be on hand. There's about 25, 30 solid guys going to be at BC Place for this ceremony. I love Wall of Fame night. The 2000 Grey Cup has a special place in my heart. The first team with a sub-500 record to win it all in that 2000 season. Before we hear from Damon Allen, remember back at the start of the year before training camp, when we were starting to roll out some of the 70th season history stuff, we did a deep dive on each of the Lions' 6 Grey Cup championships, and we're going to replay that one from 2000 right here before we get to Damon Allen. Looking back at 2000 on First and Now. Yeah, and it all worked out in the end, and we can get to a couple key points here in our rewatch. I know you mentioned on the last episode that this was the Grey Cup for the Lions that you knew the least amount about, right, going in? So I'm interested to hear what you learned, what you took in, but one quick thing off the top, and I've rewatched this a few times, and I always chuckle. Chris Cuthbert and Chris Walby were the play-by-play and color duo. Steve Armitage on the sidelines. Love Steve Armitage as a broadcaster, based in Vancouver for all those years. But I laugh, though. Chris Cuthbert early on says, "We're excited to introduce our yellow virtual first down marker." Think about that for a second. Nowadays, you can't watch a football telecast without that.
Yep.
Right? And they're introducing this new great technology to kick off the Grey Cup telecast on CBC. Just laugh at that because that's become such a staple of our football viewing. CFL, NFL, college, what have you. So yeah, it was brand new at the time.
The broadcast of the 2000 Grey Cup too, it was Cuthbert and Walby on the play-by-play in color, but then they had Glenn Suter and Pinball Clemens in like this booth
on the panel
in the back of the end zone, doing like in-game analysis. There was a very controversial play toward the end of the game where there was it was originally ruled a Calvillo fumble, and it turned into a forward pass, but then it became intentional grounding, and they did this big review over it, and both coaches are irate, and they brought in Pinball to explain and Glenn Suter to explain why it's now grounding and all of that. So that was cool to see too. Glenn Suter's more early broadcasting days.
And a lot of what I had jotted down here, we've kicked around already with the round table we just did, but yeah, you can't understate the two-headed backfield of Millington and Drummond. This defense had some names that might not resonate right away, but these guys played key roles. Mike Fletcher with a big interception. The first Montreal pass by Calvillo is a Mike Fletcher interception and long return to set them up and sets up the first points of the game. Herman Smith, an all-star coming off the edge. Eric Carter, a Wall of Fame inductee himself back in 2018, like we discussed. So we pay a lot and we give a lot of credence to Damon Allen and the running backs and the receivers, but this defense had a couple of key game breakers who shone brightly in this win.
Well, this is another stat I think we have to maybe fact check with Steve Daniel, but it has to be, so the Lions won the Grey Cup in 1994, and then the next Grey Cup was obviously here in 2000. Both of the first passes the opposition threw were intercepted. That Calvillo throw, he didn't see Mike Fletcher. He was throwing a curler out, and Mike Fletcher just kind of came on an angle and picked it off. It was pretty bad read by Calvillo, and maybe had some nerves going on there. But The defense stepped up big too. They got a couple sacks toward the end of the game. Noah Cantor.
Yep.
Toward the end of the game, had a couple big plays. He was involved in that intentional grounding play too, I believe. And yeah, they stepped up. There was another to start the second half of that game. Montreal came down driving, and then it was Eric Carter picking off. Calvillo took a wide side go ball, and Eric Carter was just a jump ball, and Eric Carter got in front of it and picked it off, and that was a big play that stopped the Alouettes' early momentum in the second half.
Yeah, again, the Lions never trailed in this game, came close to giving it up in the end, and never trailed in the 2 playoff wins, and situational football is key. Special teams, we've talked about the importance. Louis Pasaglia, a couple misses in the first half, and again, we hit on it. Steve Armitage asking Barado at halftime was their concern, but when it mattered the most, he did it. Louis kicked the field goal to put them up 28-20 before Montreal's comeback attempt came up short. So at the end of the day, he kicks the eventual winning points.
Yeah, and then back in our first Grey Cup deep dive, one play that really stood out to me was Bob Swift that I had no idea about.
Right.
This year's edition of that is definitely Donnie Blair. He's all dripped out with the tinted visor, and he came through. He was a nice player for them. He had 5 catches for 66 yards right in the first half. I ended up just Googling his name because I didn't know who he was. And first photo that pops up is him at his Calgary Dino days where he went first overall in the CFL draft, and just looks like he'd be a fun guy to be around. And yeah, like Jamie said that when times were tough, it was Donnie Blair in his first season with the BC Lions that called that infamous players only meeting, right? That teams often have when they're trying to get through something. And so Blair was someone who did it on the field and off the field too that season.
Yeah, Vanier Cup, first overall pick you mentioned by Edmonton, and came over to BC after a couple of years with the green and gold. And yep, one of those unsung hero contributors. And yeah, the tinted visor kind of just added a whole new level of,
rocket number 20
swagger for Donnie Blair. So quite the deep dive here. Anything else stand out to you before we go for it or punt?
You have a long lost relative, Alouettes kicker and punter named Terry Baker. Terry Baker, yeah. Any relation?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
And I'll put you on the spot too.
But he was a veteran, Terry. Like he was Ottawa Rough Riders. Yeah, he was a kicker for a long time.
It gave me a little chuckle when the kicker rolls out and it says Baker on the back. And I'm like, oh, is this Papa Baker out here? Yeah. Who was the halftime show? There are halftime shows this Grey Cup.
I do know this one. It was the Guess Who.
That's a good halftime show. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, pure taste of Canadiana, right? There are still some people who are just adamant it must be Canadian. I don't agree with that. But the Guess Who at that time was awesome.
Yeah, that helps.
Whether they're Canadian or not.
Yeah. And then I want to shout out Alpha Jackson too, obviously the number 1 receiver, over 1,100 yards for the Lions in that season, but he's the guy who ices that game on the onside kick, and just a jump ball and crazy vertical from Alfred Jackson. I think he was only like 6'1", so it's not like he was towering over guys like Katoy does on our onside kicks, but it was the vertical that got Alfred that ball.
Knocked it out of bounds, right? Yeah,
no, he catches it.
He catches it. Yeah,
he
made the play
right in front of the BC Lions sideline. That would have been the Calgary Stampeders home sideline. So that's something that came through my mind too.
True.
If we ever go to a Grey Cup one day and it's not in BC place, sometimes you have to take over the sideline that you're not usually on. That's got to be a bit of a mental change too, right? Because usually the opposition will be on the east side of the field, right? Because then you have the sun coming in your face. I believe that's why it's done that way. But BC was on the home sideline on the west side of the stadium. Yeah, that would be different. It'd be something, of course, we haven't experienced yet, but being in a stadium and being on the home side, if that was the situation. The sunshine aspect of it. I know it's dark out for the Grey Cup, but you know what I mean. Don't have to deal with the white horse running behind the bench either if you're on the home side. You got to keep your head up for that. Yeah, you do. Absolutely. It's dangerous. You said it. Yeah. Can be, you're in the line of fire, man. It's, adds to the game experience in Calgary. I enjoy that part of it. Yeah, you got to avoid death on the sideline. Yep. Yeah. 2000, the 4th championship of the Lions, the first Grey Cup champs of this current century. And we encourage you to listen back to our previous deep dives. We'll do 2006 in a couple of weeks. That team, one of my favorite Lions teams ever. And it was a championship that was much needed in an era where they'd come up short a couple times. So there you go.
such a great one. And I mentioned it in there, Nick, and I still love it. Chris Cuthbert says, we're going to introduce our yellow virtual first down marker. Think of football watching experience and having that first down marker there. It's so essential. And that was new in the CFL in 2000.
Yeah,
I'll always take that away.
Come a long way. And I remember that was a Grey Cup that I watched for the first time, actually, when we watched it back in the offseason there. And that dramatic 2-point convert after the Ben Gaboon touchdown. Just CFL at its finest, right? The high drama.
Inside of 3 minutes, the best games are the ones that are decided inside of 3 minutes. And we're going to hear from Damon Allen coming up here right away, right now on First and Now. And it is our great pleasure now to welcome in BC Lions all-time leading passer, Canadian Football Hall of Fame member, Grey Cup champion in 2000, of course, among other years. I think you won your first in 87 with Edmonton. Is that right, Damon?
That is correct. I went in 86 and we lost to Hamilton, and then we came back in 87 and beat Toronto. Yes.
And you won another one in 93 in Edmonton, and another one we won't talk about in 2004 with Toronto. But yes, it is an honor to speak with you once again. It's been a few years. We had you on a bit of a roundtable in 2020 when we were going through the 20th anniversary of 2000. But
that's right.
Yes. Welcome back, and how's life treating you these days? I understand you're down in Southern California looking after your folks. How's life these days?
Life is good. I'm very thankful to be able to, when I left the game in 2008, to be able to not have any really effects of playing the game of football. So I'm thankful in that way, physically, mentally, and those things. And so I'm it's been good, man, to be able to be back, where my family is, where I originally born and raised in San Diego, to see my parents. And so it's been good to see my family.
And of course, you're getting ready to get on a plane to come up to Vancouver. Of course, the 2000 champions going to be finally enshrined onto the Wall of Fame. How much are you looking forward to rekindling with some of your old teammates? I know you say you're in a big text group with Drummond and some of the guys, but how excited are you for this night, Damon?
It's always exciting to be able to see your former teammates, because you understand what you went through. They're honoring the 2000 Grey Cup team, and that's in a story in itself. It's an amazing story to be the first team with the worst record, as you can say, to win a Grey Cup, 8-10. I think previous before that, I know Ottawa back in the day, they went to the Grey Cup, but they didn't win. But we were the first team to win a Grey Cup with a losing record. So understanding that story is really neat, to come back and be honored in such a way, and to see my former teammates, because I played with some great players as well.
Damon, when you look back at that 2000 team, what are some of the first thoughts you have in terms of what defined that team and what made it a championship caliber team?
Well, I think it's that team had a lot of characters on that team. And so when I first came to BC in 97, I think we had the opportunity to win go to the Grey Cup in 99, due to my fumble. But in 2000, I remember preparing for my 2000 year, wanting to make amends of that fumble in 99, which we're first place in the West. I think we're favored in that game. We had a really good football team, and I knew coming back the next year we were going to have a good football team. But you have to understand, each year is different. And we started the season off, we lost a lot of close games early in the year, and probably didn't find our rhythm as a team until the second half of the season. But due to the second half of the season, we were actually putting pieces together, adding a guy like Carl Kidd on the defensive side of the ball. We added Jimmy O, J.O., which we call Jimmy Oliver, to our receiving core. And then things start turning around. And And I can remember in that second half of the year, I mean, we were still averaging between Drummond, Milson, the 3D backfield, including myself. I mean, we're averaging a league high, 160 yards a game rushing the football. But, what people don't realize in the second half of the year and of that season, I threw for 3,000 yards in the second half of the season. So offensively, we had caught our stride. And then our defense really came around and became, turnover opportunity. And so then the season, we went from one team trying to just get some wins together on a consistent basis to the second half of the year went on a 7 or 8 game winning streak, and we weren't talking about winning or losing. We were talking about how many points we're going to score this game. And so the confidence level of that team just completely changed.
What about the coaching change, Damon? How much of a role did that play? Because obviously it's pretty remarkable that you go on to win, or this team goes on to win a Grey Cup after firing its coach midway through the season.
Well, I think the coaching staff always plays a part because the new coach tries to put his vision into the organization and to at least give us some direction. And so when Brado took over, we started putting the pieces together, and then we started taking on this is who we are. And so we end up becoming a bunch of renegades, stepping on the field and believing that we can win every game. And once, things started rolling our way, the confidence level of our football team even grew. And then, like I said, later in the year, when we hit the playoffs, and we went on the road, and I remember Adam Rita told us, he said, hey, we're packing one time. We're going on the road. We're going to go from Edmonton. After we win the game, we're going to go to Calgary. And then we're going to win that game, and we're going to stay in Calgary. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, taking over the Stampeders locker room after that Western final, given what happened in '99 as well, Damon, safe to say that felt pretty sweet, didn't it?
Well, it felt sweet because I was with that Edmonton team that we beat them before, and we're thinking the same thing. And
right.
We're going to be the home team as well. So, yes, there's no question. I mean, that's the best way to go about doing it, because you have to also understand, remember in '99, they beat us in the Western Final. And so, like I said, remember I said, well, I wanted to redeem myself. Yeah. The situation happened on the flip side. Now we're playing in their home, the Western Final, and we came to play that day. And so we end up booting them out of the Grey Cup. And it's always a sweet, not necessarily revenge, but it's a sweet lesson learn from '99 to take advantage of it this year and do the same thing to them.
Returning the favor, spoiling the Grey Cup party. Yeah, that's just a sweet angle to the story. Hey, I want to say it was a couple of weeks maybe before the playoffs where Louis announced he was going to retire at the end of the season, and then the last regular season game, last home game, was kind of his farewell party. They had the big ceremony after, and I remember, I think it was Jamie Terrace getting on the mic and said, we're not done yet. We still have some business to take care of. But how much did Louis' announcement sort of galvanize that team, an opportunity to win another one for him?
Well, I think that's just an added bonus to what we were already thinking and what we always wanted to do is to win a Grey Cup. And so, yes, that was an added bonus to our goals and what we wanted to accomplish that year. I mean, every year that every team I played for, we wanted to win the Grey Cup. So, how that story is going to show itself, we never know. I mean, every year is different. And so, like I said, in '99, we had a really good record and we were a really good football team. 2000, we started off slow. But we, slowly got it together. And then, like you said, we got on pace to the point where we weren't talking about winning or losing. We were talking about how many points we're going to score and, by who we're going to play next. And so those are the great feelings that you get when you go through the playoffs. And, we went from a team going through the playoffs averaging over 30-some points a game. And so, we're a confident bunch. But then, like I said, when the Grey Cup came around and and Louis missed those 2 field goals. We were like, hey, man, you okay? You okay? We want to know, you all right?
All of them in the first half, I think, right? Yeah.
Right. And so the game could have easily been a much greater margin because I even missed a few touchdowns before halftime. It could have been a set of field goals we could have turned into 7. So, but at the end of the day, he made the field goal when we needed, and he went off like he wanted to go off, is to win a Grey Cup and retire at the same time.
When it comes to the actual Grey Cup game, Damon, definitely you mentioned the 3-headed monster of yourself, Robert Drummond and Sean Millington, and it looked like you guys made a pretty strong emphasis to hit the ground early and often, right? With Sean, Robert, and yourself too. Was that the game plan going in, or is that just kind of started that way and kept it rolling, or how did that all come about?
Well, I just think we just kept it rolling based on how we were playing the last 5 or 6 games going into the playoffs. And I think, we were running the ball. We were like saying, I think we led the league in rushing that year. And then at the same time, we were throwing the ball. And I think the fact that we were throwing the ball so well during that second half of the year really made our running game even better. And so, when you're worrying about drum and meal ticket, then you forget about the old timer, the other D in the equation, that leads me to, hey, you're not worried about me. Then I can make some crucial runs at crucial times and spread the ball around. And so it made it easier because, like I said, we can't do all those things when you as a quarterback, understanding that, our line was playing extremely well in those 5 to 6 games throughout preparing for the playoffs. And I mean, like I said, I've never seen a quarterback throw for 500 yards on his back. And so when I was being able to play clean, throwing the football in the pocket, and we can run the football, and I mean, we were doing everything, shovel passes, everything, to try to get the ball down the field and put points on the board. And so, it caught us at the right time. And like I said, we're a very confident bunch going into the playoffs and believing that we can win the whole thing.
What about the receivers he had to throw to as well? Obviously, Alfred Jackson's the main target, but I think Jimmy Cunningham had a big touchdown in the West Final at Calgary. I think Don Blair may have led the team in yards in the playoffs. Like, you guys had what do you remember from that group and all the weapons you had?
Well, I think if you remember as well, is there was a point in the season, we not only changed the coach, but then there was a point in the season that, Donnie Blair came up and saying that, it seems like the play call and all these things were not the same, right? And so, I think a lot of times what people don't realize is that, I started to have a really good feel for our game plans. And so, they basically handled the play calling over to me. And so I just stayed with what we did well, tried to keep teams off balance, tried to change the launch pad. And then, like saying, the offensive lineman keeping me clean, which allows me to read coverage like I should. And, first guy's not open and my second defender, and I throw it to my third one. But it got to that point. And, I take a lot of pride in, controlling games, calling plays, calling situations. And so there's not many quarterbacks over the last 10, 15 years that's actually called a Grey Cup game, let alone one. But, throughout my career, I called 3 Grey Cup games myself when I played with Edmonton as well. So I was very comfortable, regardless of, 15 million people might be watching the game. But, I was really focused in, and that really challenged me as a quarterback to really be sharp and preparing myself as well.
Calling a Grey Cup or calling games in general, is that something you still see often these days that you've heard, or is that something that's pretty rare?
It's pretty rare, I think, in this day and age. But like I said, in the last 10 to 15 years, I don't think there's been a quarterback that's called a Grey Cup game. Previous to that, when I was going in, because it was much different in the 80s and in the early 90s, is, there might be quarterbacks that have called a Grey Cup game, like Dunnigan, Tracy Ham. I'm sure Ken Austin has done it. whether they win or lose. But I'm very proud of the fact that the 3 games I called, we won.
Let's talk about the game itself. Was it the 88th Grey Cup, I believe, 2000? Yes. Is it all the numbers kind of lumped together now, but 2000. Stick with 2000. I believe it was the 80th, but 88th. Sorry. What do you remember specifically when it came to Montreal? Because remember, Calgary was clearly nemesis. You get over that hump, and all of a sudden, okay, got to reset now because the Alouettes had been knocking on the door for a couple years, right? What do you remember the lead up that week, focusing in on what the team had to do in order to execute, Damon?
Well, I think we throughout the season, I don't know if we what was our record playing the back-to-back against Montreal, but I believe that we did beat them in BC Place. And so, but like I said, the times they played us early in that year, I mean, we were like saying we weren't working on all cylinders or firing on all cylinders. And I think when they seen us during the Grey Cup, they knew they were dealing with a different team, a different defense, and a different offense. And so I think they're much more, we always felt that they're a little bit more fearful of us during the Grey Cup than it was during the regular season. I just believe due to the fact that, we were coming in really hot as a football team. And so, but we came in very confident that we can move the ball and we can do the things that we felt that they have to deal with what we are bringing to the stadium, other than dealing with and worried about what they do on defense. They had a much more difficult time in dealing with a team that can run and throw.
And Damon, I was thinking, or I was looking up your bio today and on your website, and I was looking at the fact that you were drafted by the Detroit Tigers, and then in the 1984 MLB draft. So you didn't play for the Tigers, but you did go to a Pittsburgh Pirates camp, I read. Do you ever think about that? You maybe could have just went on a trajectory where you played in MLB and none of this great CFL career would have happened, or was football always what you had your mind set on?
No, it was definitely a thought coming out of university because, like I said, I was at Cal State Fullerton. We won the national championship that year. All the pitching staff got drafted. I went 7th round with the Detroit Tigers, and I remember the Detroit Tigers scout and the head coach Gene Murphy that they were arguing on the field, and they were saying that you're doing this kid a disservice. He's a baseball player, not a football player. Based on my size. But for me, I chose the fact that I was an everyday player. When I came out of Fullerton, I was a middle reliever, spot starter. So there were times being a middle reliever, you may go through a 3-game series, you may not even pitch based on what the starters. And then now when they started adding the closers to the mix, then middle relievers really didn't pitch unless the starter got lit in the first 3 innings. And so nowadays they're allowing, so you look at it nowadays, I mean, they're not allowing the, starting pitchers even go 6 innings anymore, right? So everyone's like chopping in middle relievers, closers, starters, and so it's almost reversed. Now the closers are now starters, and it's crazy now. But I basically chose because I was an everyday player playing football. I was a starting quarterback on our football team, and I really enjoy, participating. And participating should be the most, anybody who plays sports, you want to participate in, right?
Yeah, I read something, all the complete games that Greg Maddux and Nolan Ryan used to throw, don't see that anymore. And I miss those days too. So that's a great story though. How we've seen you, I want to say we've seen you last couple years in Toronto. I think we've seen you last year. I saw you there at the Hotel X, I think, having breakfast, and so you get to games when you can. But what quarterbacks do you like following in the CFL these days, Damon?
Well, like I said, I'm still a big fan of all the quarterbacks, and I still watch the CFL even today. And so, um, I love the fact the way Toronto played last year, and they were going all the way, and then they got to the Eastern Final, and then, Chad Kelly had, probably one of his worst games in the whole season. But at the end of the year, I mean, I've always loved teams that are playing well, and they get on that run. And, Montreal did the same thing last year, right? Once they got on a roll and they beat Toronto in Toronto, and then they went to Winnipeg and beat them. No, they went. Who did they play after Toronto? They played Toronto in the Eastern.
They beat Winnipeg in the Grey Cup in Hamilton after that. Yeah,
and then I was at that game, but the game prior to Toronto, because that was the Eastern Final they lost to. But yeah, they got on a little roll, and then they're finding ways to win, and that's what happens. And that's what I'm always waiting for. I always enjoy the second half of the season, because that really shows like the character of football teams, what they need to do to win games. And so right now, everyone's somewhat, trying to, get better as the season goes on, right? And so, and if a team stays healthy, I mean, they got a chance to go all the way. So. But I like all the quarterbacks. I mean, there's not someone that's favorite. I know I've talked to Vernon Adams quite a bit during the season, and there's quarterbacks that I talk to about the upcoming season, and they may ask me questions. Well,
it's good. Yeah, it's definitely been some great quarterback play this year. Yeah.
I was gonna say, Damon, too. It's pretty crazy this season. It's shaping up that 11 wins is probably gonna win you the West Division, and I guess it kind of all relays back to what you were saying about it's just about getting hot at the right time, right? And that's what the season's gonna come down to, in your opinion. Whether it's us, whether it's the Bombers, Edmonton, whomever, right? They just got to get hot at the right time.
No, absolutely, because it's saying the first half of the season you can really put yourself in a very difficult bind if you lose pretty much majority of your games in the first half. But if you stayed around 500 in the first half of the season and you catch on fire at the end, you have a chance to even win the Eastern Division. I mean, we got Montreal playing very well right now and don't look like they're going to be beat. But that Toronto was the same way last year. So you never know until, like you're saying, you get to that Grey Cup game. But there'll be some teams in the Eastern Division will catch fire, and then you play them at the wrong time. It doesn't matter what record you are. You have to be able to perform in the playoffs and in the Grey Cup to win the Grey Cup.
It's all about getting hot at the right time, indeed, as you know. Listen, Damon, it's always a pleasure. It's great that you're coming back, and we look forward to seeing you Friday and seeing all the 2,000 team members coming back. Going to be a special moment, halftime, Legends Night, 70th season, and a great way to celebrate it. So glad to see you as always. You look like you could still suit up. That'll never change, and we'll talk on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't give me a football. I'll show you. I can still do it.
Let's roll. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Damon. See you Friday.
Looking forward on Friday. Yes. Thanks, guys.
Could have talked football with him all day, and that's some excellent stuff right there. Damon Allen going to be part of the 2000 Wall of Fame celebrations. Love it.
Yeah, definitely going to get one of the louder roars, I bet, during the halftime induction. I know Louis Pasegla is going to be there too, so he's probably going to take the cake, but got a legendary quarterback like Damon Allen. I was going to ask him this too, we kind of just ran out of time, but one of 4 players in professional football history to hit 80,000 yards. And the other 3 are Anthony Calvillo, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees.
And Damon was at one point pro football's all-time leading passer when he retired, yeah. And Louis, of course, is still pro football's all-time leading scorer.
Just legends, yeah. So who's the next to get there? Mahomes, Nathan Rourke, Trey Ford, Josh Allen?
Well, Mahomes is definitely one of those guys. He'll pull a Brady, like he'll play into his 40s, I think, at a high level. So has to be him, does it not?
Yeah, because I think Brady's number 1 now, right? Because I think he has
Anthony Richardson.
Hey, maybe. Yeah, well, Anthony Richardson has age on his side. You got to think of youthful guys. So I think if Nathan Rourke and Trey Ford, the only thing is you got to be like high level for like 10 to 15 years on. So
yeah,
that's where the impressibility.
I don't think it's going to be Trey Ford, with all due respect, but you
never know.
You never know.
As they say, availability is your best ability.
That's right.
So.
But yeah, there should be a few loud roars there. Yeah, and just. I even watched Sean Millington's interview on Global on Wednesday morning, and he's got his own Wall of Fame jacket because he's in there as an individual, and he's flashing his 2000 ring. You know who always wears the 2000 ring? Chaika.
Oh, because he was an employee at that time,
Well,
right?
he's been an employee for a few Grey Cups, but he wears maybe the 2000 one's easier to wear. It's not as massive, so...
Well, I think you'd want to wear the massive ones.
That's what I would say. Yeah,
the rings now are just ridiculous too. Teams make all like their hype videos now and all that. So
yeah, but yeah, love going down memory lane. And a reminder: Legends Night Game presented by Bosa Properties. Adult tickets for $25, youth 17 and under for $15. Backyard party 4:00. $5 Molson Coors beverages. Going to be a special night. Our first Friday night home game, at least in the regular season.
Friday night, the den, lights out, got the gunmetals on. So wear your gunmetal or buy your gunmetal if you don't have a gunmetal. It's going to be
love gunmetals. Yeah, love the gunmetals. And we'll talk more about those perhaps in Go For It or Punt. But we're talking about it being Week 15 in the Canadian Football League. Lions Argonauts, the lone game on Friday. Remember, no more Thursdays as the National Football League is back. Doubleheader Saturday, I guess that means, right? Starting with the Red Blacks at the Tiger Cats. Don't look now, but Hamilton's 2 wins over Toronto, they have the season series. So Lions can get it done, maybe do Hamilton a favor. The Tiger Cats, you can talk about maybe getting back in the discussion for third in the East.
That's very kind of you.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm not chance to move 4 points back, maybe, right?
I'm not buying it. I think.
No, I never said it was happening. I'm just laying out the scenarios.
Okay, fair. I think even if Toronto, we drop them to 6 and 7, they still got 3 games up on Hamilton. And yeah, if you win, you're 2 back. But I think because Toronto's probably going to win at least 8-9 games. So that kind of means Hamilton has to run the table. I don't think
it's not going to happen.
They're going to run the table.
No.
But I get what you're saying. There's a possibility. When the Ticats do run the table and we see them in the Grey Cup, you can all laugh at me specifically. You won't take any blame for this, but Ottawa looked dang good last week against Toronto, right? They had that game wrapped up by halftime. So these teams meet. I find these are always close games, though. Divisional games, all of that, right? Jeremiah Mazzoli, you used to be a part of these on both sides, right? So now it's Drew Brown for the Red Blacks and Hamilton off a bye. We'll see what happens here. They got that big win on Labor Day, so I don't know. I guess crazier things have happened.
Definitely. Ottawa, by the way, is in with a win. Yeah. They will clinch a playoff
good for them.
spot.
They're the only team that's undefeated at home this season. It's pretty. And if they on the road, but
correct me if I'm wrong, the Red Blacks have not made the playoffs since losing the Grey Cup in 2018.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Coach Ray Campbell. Yeah,
it's been a long time coming. Alouettes at Stampeders. Apparently Calgary going back to Jake Mayer. At least reports I've seen that he was getting the first team reps and Logan Bonner was working with the scout team. So that experiment did not go well. But yeah, not going to sugarcoat it. Things not looking too rosy in Calgary these days. But there's still time. Moj was talking about this when we were out at Shark Club for On Tap. Couple weeks from now, could be singing a different story, but really, Calgary's just got to win football games now. Speaking of having to run the table, I think they pretty much have to do it if they want to stay in the thick of this.
Yeah, and all due respect to Calgary, Dave Dickinson, and everybody there, but we need the Alouettes to bury them, right? And these 2 games has got us back into a tie for first place in the West Division, but 3 games still separate first and last in the West. This division's still really tight too. So while it was nice to beat up on Montreal last week, now we're their biggest fans because whenever it's East and West, and when the West is this tight, we need the East to come out on top. So let's have Montreal take care of business on the road and make a man. And they're like the Stampeders are still 4-2 at home this season too. So it's not like they're 0-6 on the road. So
and look, they beat us. They beat Winnipeg. Took Hamilton to the woodshed in week 1. So, yeah, any given week, they've shown that they're capable of being in games. But Desperate times right now.
Yeah, we saw it firsthand, yeah.
All right, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Edmonton have byes, just 3 games this week. And Lions, of course, will have a bye next week, so there will be no first and now next week. But well-deserved break for everyone in the organization. All right, going to wrap it up by going for it and punting. What are you going for?
Well, Sunday was obviously week 1 of the NFL season. I'm in 3 fantasy football leagues this year. It's a little too much, but I love them all. The new one, I'm in a new one this year. It's actually with Moj. So
I had to decline the invite because I'm already in one, but yes.
Well, you be in trouble because my team is looking like a wagon right now. So I played harp in week 1, BC Lions Punjabi.
Yeah.
I play
Not sure about that competition, but yeah, no, just kidding.
I'm kidding. Harp. I had him by 11 a.m. I think it was over. So I was all in my fantasy football. I was checking my teams all day. It's kind of I wouldn't call it a problem because I'm going for fantasy football. I love it. But I was glued to my phone all Sunday, just refreshing my teams. The one league I lost in this week was my buddies league that I kind of take the most pride in. I'm actually the defending champ in that league too. So got off to a rough start there, but we'll regroup, dominate for week 2.
Sure, yeah. In fantasy.
That's what I'm going for. Fantasy football is so fun. I just if I was calling the shots here, I'd get a nice CFL league where you can play against your buddies too. It's just the best on the weekends.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I took a beating. Lost my fantasy matchup. Lost my bets. The LA Rams couldn't cover for me. They lost by 6, of course. Had to give up the touchdown.
Oh yeah, because they were like +4 or whatever.
Yeah, I think I had them +4.5 and the under. So if they gave up a field goal and lost, I would have been fine. For some reason, I bet the Cleveland Browns. Why? I don't know. I thought
Dak is back.
Yeah, apparently, and a good thing the Niners won because everything else, no bueno. So
are running backs replaceable? Get your take on it.
They are to an extent.
McCaffrey, that was crazy when Jordan.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not going to jump to conclusions and say that that McCaffrey's replaceable because that offense is so dependent on what he does. And if the Niners get offensive line play like that all year,
look out.
They're not going to lose, but. I know it's a long season. Anything can happen.
Bust every year
are they replaceable? Yeah. I could see why some might say that.
Yes and no. It's just kind of a fun debate that sparks up a lot of silly
absolutely.
dialogue. But
I'm going for, on the topic of gunmetals, how about just third jerseys in general?
Yeah.
They're such a big part of North American sports now for the past, I want to say, the mid to late 90s, the NHL started with them. The Canucks had those salmon red that I love those, by the way.
Those are cool.
People don't like them. I like them.
Yeah.
That was the first Canuck third jersey. There was a handful of NHL teams that released theirs at that time. Remember, like the LA Kings had that Burger King type logo. And the
like
St.
yellow
Louis,
and purple?
No, it's like a white one with a gray Burger King type logo. We'll look it up after here. So not the purple ones, which are awesome. But with gunmetal being back, I'm going for third jerseys. There you go. You're looking at it.
I have never seen these LA Kings.
So that one, that came out in the first wave of NHL third jerseys when the Canucks had their salmon reds. So yeah,
money for the third jerseys.
Yeah,
get your revenue.
Love third jerseys, man. I'm gonna say it. I'm going for it. Should I stick with it here? Punting?
This isn't my punt, but it's crossing. It's getting a little too far. I love the third jerseys. I'm with you, but in the NBA, I'm tuning into I remember I was watching like a Clippers and a Milwaukee game, and Milwaukee's wearing like blue and the Clippers are wearing black, and I have no idea what team. Like if you just looked at it, it's crazy.
Well, the NBA's kind of shifted to teams wearing dark at home now too, right? That confuses me.
They wear everything in the playoffs, everything. I don't like that. So.
Yeah, watching the finals, and I think Boston was in green at home. I like how
in other sports though you just have to declare which jersey you're going to rock in the postseason, and ultimately it usually is your home and away. But yeah, time and a place for third jerseys. Definitely not in week 1 too. That's kind of my hot take. I didn't like that the Seahawks and the Giants, they wore especially the Giants.
Those they look like the Montreal Canadiens
on opening night though. You can't be doing that on opening night.
I do love those Seahawk throwbacks.
Not on opening night though. I'm not about jerseys. You just got to rock what you wear full time on opening night.
Fair enough.
Opening day, I guess.
And I like how they had the end zones painted throwback there in Seattle.
You got to go all in with all of that. I like that too.
So yeah, loving the third jerseys, and I'll stick with it here quickly. Punting, we experienced this at Shark Club. Love the Shark Club. Okay, do you have to have the sound up on a sporting event when it's obvious there's only one or two guys there watching? Canada-Mexico soccer, I think it was a friendly. No one's there's one guy at the bar in a Mexico jersey. Other than that, no one was paying attention. We're having to yell at each other to talk and get ready for on tap. I don't know. NFL Sunday, sure.
Yeah.
If you're a sports bar, have the sound on.
Yeah,
Canuck games, sure. We were in there during the Stanley Cup final when Vegas won last year. Absolutely. But yeah, there's a time and a place for it. Come on.
Yeah, I got to punt that.
Punt it. All right, what do you got?
I'm with you. I'm just not what I'm punting this week is I'm just not into street names being numbers. I know that's a big thing here in Surrey, and I just don't like it. And I know the purpose of it is that they're chronological, they come in order. But I'm never looking at the streets in order. If I don't know where I'm going, I'm looking at my GPS in my car, and it just confuses me. There's like a different one, and like if you type in an address, I remember whenever you copy it too on like if somebody texts you like an address and it's like a number, it's always like messed up. And when you try to copy it, it's like it's like highlighted. It's like I don't know what's going on. It's like I think it wants it to be a phone number. So that's always a pain, just trying to copy the number into your maps, and then you put it in your maps, and one pops up in Surrey, one pops up in Coquitlam, one pops up in Maple Ridge because they're all the same numbers. So I know you should know what area you're going to, but it's just I like when it's just names for streets, not numbers. So I'm punting numbers for streets.
Yeah, we were in Edmonton a few weeks ago walking to Rogers Place for the Halinka, and then it's like, okay, the arena's on 101st, but we're also on the avenues that are across are also, it can get confusing if you're not in a city you're used to. So,
I get the purpose behind it, but I'm punting it. Give me my names. I grew up on a street called Camelot Court back in Winnipeg. I love that street name. Just better than, I grew up on First Avenue.
Yeah, I grew up on Bridlington Drive, North Delta. Shout out. So
just sounds better too, right? Take a little pride in it.
Yeah, punt that away. Sure.
So I thought about that yesterday when I was driving over to some number street.
Build a time machine, go back in time to when these cities are being built, and
run for mayor of Surrey. Yeah, and we'll
name it Rourke Avenue or
Milt Steele. There's a Milt Steele Avenue in Winnipeg. Actually.
There is, yes,
right by the old
G. Roy Simon Way outside BC Place. There you go.
Get it done. Yeah.
Get it done. All right. Excellent stuff. Thanks again to Damon Allen for joining us. Lions Argonauts Friday, bclions.com. Get your tickets. 25 for adults, 15 for kids. That's 17 and under. And be sure to subscribe, rate, leave a review to this podcast. Talk to you the week after next as we're on a bye, hopefully talking about an 8-6 Lions team as the Hamilton Tiger Cats are in town. Friday, September the 27th. First and Now will return. This is the official BC Lions podcast.